What it do, homies? We out here with some new Sleep Token. This time we are checking out their song Damocles. Okay. Now, what I ended up doing was I went and I searched to see what this meant, right? Because I'm not familiar with the word. And what came up was that, it refers to a legendary figure, and the term sword of Damocles is an idiom used to describe a situation where imminent and terrible danger is looming, often represented as a sword suspended by a hair's breadth over one's head. So, imminent doom is right about to cut you right there. Idiom emphasizes the precarious nature of power and the constant anxiety that can accompany it. I like this. I learn new things, especially when it's time to review some Sleep Token. And, a lot of us find ourselves in these type of dangers, whether it be physically or mentally and sometimes emotionally. So we're going to jump into this. I do have the lyrics over here to my right to make sure that we are not missing anything of crucial importance. Let's go ahead and shut up. Oh, if I could bring it up. Let's see. Let's go ahead, shut up, turn it up.
Well, I've been waking up under blades, blue blossom days. If only Damocles would hit me back. No alabaster carvings or faces on a farthing would prevent my head from fading to black.
Okay, walking up and under blades, if only. So begging actually for it, tired of living underneath these type of conditions and everything. And then no alabaster carvings or faces on a farthing would prevent my head. So essentially, when it does happen, know that it was something that was coming. Right. It's foretold. It's going to happen. And when it does happen, it's kind of like, hey, I told you so, it's going to happen. But essentially just how the gravity of it happening, it essentially means that, it's final. Like everything that could have prevented this has already tried to happen, and it's not going to happen. This is the the head is fading to black.
And it feels like falling into the sea from outer space in seconds to me. And I play discordant days on repeat.
Discordant.
Until they look like harmony.
Ain't no way. And then he harmonizes it. So I play discordant days. Hold on, I gotta search something here real quick. Discordant. Yeah, definition. So disagreeing or incongruous. So like discordant, musical theory terms, these notes that would sound like really, really weird together. Harsh, jarring because of lack of harmony. So yeah, definitely a music theory term. If any of you guys actually make music, especially if you like pencil in your stuff, you start to make chords, you start making the music to find your chord progression, and every now and then you would hear things that sound weird. Now, it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes that sounds good, especially when you want to add interest into your music, or horror themes, right? I think they use a lot of discordant and stuff like that. The interesting is that he says he plays discordant days on repeat. Not necessarily plays, but almost like I am living through this. And then until it looks like harmony. When we hear these different types of horror types of, because that's what I'm thinking about right now. It exists in more than just horror music. But when I think of horror music, you got to think about how crazy and how weird it sounded before it started becoming something that was very, very used widely amongst a lot of musicians, producers, and what have you. So when he says until it looks like harmony, right, it's a sense of until it makes sense, right? Sometimes it doesn't. So that essentially means that he is playing it in repeat into an endless void.
When the river runs dry and the curtain is cold, how will I know if I can't see the bottom? Come up for air and choke.
This piano is beautiful.
No one else knows that I've got a problem. What if I can't get up and stand tall? What if the diamond days are all gone? And who will I be when the empire falls? Wake up alone and I'll be
After the last song, the caramel, and I still can't get over how he sung that. I can't remember. Yes, the way he sung that is just absolutely beautiful. Um, that started making me think about, what the possible themes or reoccurring themes that it's going to be in this album. The success, and kind of how the whole entire band, or maybe possibly just the lead singer, how it's been pretty much how they've been dealing with it and everything. Um, it is a lot of stress. It's like one of the things where you just can't understand until you're in it. Um, so when he says stuff like this, like when the river run dries and the curtain's called, how would I know if I can't see the bottom? I think he's talking about his success, with the band. Come over here, choke up on it. Uh, this right. What if the diamond days are all gone? I feel like all bands have their diamond days, or your emotions and everything, where everything's like really, really high. The wake up alone and then I'll be forgotten. The alone, maybe your fans kind of forget about you. It's tough to deal with, especially when you put your passion into these projects that you make. And the alone, not necessarily like physically alone, just like, what if people just stop caring? I put so much work into this, and now what was once my diamond days is gone. you know
Well, I know I should be touring. I know these chords are boring, but I can't always be killing the game.
Here it is.
No golden grand pianos or voices from the shadows will do anything but feel the same.
Okay. Oh wow. All right. So this is almost a direct counter against some. I mean, we still got some of the song to go through, but it's almost a direct counter from the type of stuff that we've been hearing from Sleep Token, which is why he's saying that I know these chords are boring, because he knows what you're here for, right? It's like thinking about the band Polyphia. What if they just stop being so super technical and everything? What if they just want to chill? What if they just want to make something nice and simple? And of course, he's doing this. We're not hearing anything like super crazy. The piano playing is absolutely beautiful, but he's not doing anything too. It's like he's trying to get ahead of what people's perceptions of artists and everything, because you're always wanting to one up and one up. But the thing about it is that musicians, in this case, we're definitely just talking about musicians, their level up looks different, right? They might be in a higher place than they were before. It just might be in a different medium. But if it ain't the same medium, people just don't really, really care. You know what I mean? So, him waking up alone and him being forgotten because he decided to go, him and the band decided to go a whole nother direction. No golden pianos or voices from the shadows will do anything but feel the same. So, but can't be always killing the game. It can't. We're human. We err, right? Sometimes we want to, we err, but yeah.
It feels like falling into the deep from somewhere way up over the peaks. And I play this chord and days on repeat until the tape runs out on me.
He might even be playing some discordant chords.
When the river runs dry and the curtain is cold, how will I know if I can't see the bottom? Come up for air and choke on it all. No one else knows that I've got a problem. What if I can't get up and stand tall? What if the diamond days are all gone? And who will I be when the empire falls? Wake up alone and I'll be forgotten. Nobody told me I'd be begging for relief when what is silent to you feels like it's screaming to me.
Oh my goodness. And nobody told me I'd be begging for relief. Let's say that you are working on something that is your passion. You give your 100% to it. And then all of a sudden you start blowing up, right? This is something that you would like. You want this, right? Well, I wouldn't necessarily want this. There are people like, for instance, what's his name? Goit, is that how you pronounce his name? But you didn't have to cut, right? I went and looked into his story, and it looks like he never intended to get as popular as he did, right? The song just kind of blew up and everything. And I would say that he actually was begging for relief from that type of exposure. Matter of fact, didn't he kind of just disappear off the face, not the face of the earth, or maybe kind of shrunk into himself because he didn't want that. But he said, nobody told me. It's because who would tell you that, right? If you riding high, who's going to tell you, hey, you're not going to want this at some point. If anything, you got people telling you, hey, you want more, you want more, you want more. So that's a good bar, right? I mean, that's a good sentence right there, or lyric phrase.
Screaming to me. Will nobody tell me I'd get tired of myself when it all looks like heaven, but it feels like hell. When the river runs dry and the curtain is cold.
This right here, when it all looks like heaven, but it feels like hell. When he said that, I immediately started thinking about Death Punch, Five Finger Death Punch, wrong side of heaven and the right side of hell. Yeah, I mean, in that case, they were mostly talking about, vets, military and everything, but, it's all the same.
How will I know if I can't see the bottom? Come up for air and choke on it all. No one else knows that I've got a problem. What if I can't get up and stand tall? What if the diamond days are all gone? And who will I be when the empire falls? Wake up alone and I'll be forgotten.
Drums going crazy. Yes, sir. You want to know something else that I find intriguing is this photo here. This house is constructed of meticulous detail, really, really amazing detail. Kind of reminds me of Roman, not necessarily Roman. Oh yeah, I forgot that they do this in here. Yeah, so it kind of reminds me of the type of stuff, like Roman architecture or cathedrals and stuff that were made like way back in the day that still kind of hold its value and everything. But you got to think about that, all the meticulous detail that went into those, only some of them kind of stood out. A lot of pain, a lot of interest, a lot of work went into them. And they do all this work because they want them to hopefully be timeless or a representation of the time that they lived in. This is what I'm getting from this image. But sometimes, no matter how much work that you put into it, people are just not going to care. It'll get buried, you go sand, so you might unearth it, and people are like, oh, wow, that looks cool. And you kind of just move on, The sleep token, ladies and gentlemen, always giving us some really thoughtful. Oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to look at. I wanted to see how much farther off I was. So here we got a yeah, see right here in the about section, it says that here, I'll just bring it up over here. Here we go. So he begged for his fame and fans to stay. At first glance, seemed like Vessel wanted to stay with him because he liked it, but perhaps it's not liking, but a fright. So, you're forced into this. YouTube, this is just talking about what it is. So if Carmel talked about the threat outward, Damocles is the continuation focusing on the threat within, his existential dread of losing. Okay, yeah, here it is, right? Of losing his spot in the music eye, either by abandonment or disabandonment, right? Group, abandonment by the fans, or disabandonment, meaning either he wants to lose the group or the group just disappears, or breaks up. And even simply when he's out of being Vessel, so when he's being himself. This is especially concerning as the band that went viral is typically that a viral personality would only last so long. So, right. So, I wasn't too far off the mark right here. I was kind of saying right here where it says, where you can't always be killing a game. Right. And also this right here, wake up alone and then I'll be forgotten. Right here, so long before people move on to another phenomenon. And it also ties into the image that I was looking at how detailed it was. But, like I said, at the end of the day, people are just not going to care. It's just a fleeting nature. And that's especially the time that we live in, TikTok, it's almost getting to the point where you don't want to go viral, because that just means you're going to burn out that much faster. But yeah, I'm not going to dive too much into that. You guys let me know what this song spoke to you, what it actually means, or maybe even if you took anything different from it. I'll be very interested in hearing that down in the comments. Dave's out.